Peter, I'm getting sick and tired of all these weirdo Nintendo fans, these nerds out there collecting financial data, little lore, behind-the-scenes interview. Oh, do you remember Iwata Asks? Remember, Peter?
Here's the thing.
Oh God, they're the worst. Aren't those guys
gosh.
the worst? Are those weird Nintendo fans? Aren't they just the worst?
Abram, no!
A critical error is an error which the OS cannot reasonably ignore. Jake Steinberg is a streamer, writer, and certified yapper. Complimentary. Peter Hunt Szpytek is a YouTuber, journalist, and certified yapper. Derogatory. These are the things they cannot reasonably ignore.
Nintendo Derangement Syndrome. What is going on with Nintendo fans these days? I feel like ever since like the Switch 2 launched, something has been wrong in the Nintendo community. I frequently lament the kind of current state of Nintendo YouTube, Nintendo podcasts. I find that it is hard to listen to. We find ourselves in a rut of decoding financial data, trying to predict when the next Nintendo Direct is going to be, just falling to our knees in anguish when those predictions do not work out, and all of this amidst what I would say is an incredibly successful run for a brand new console with fantastic games. What is fueling the insecurity, the anxiety, the despair in the Nintendo community? To answer these questions, we have brought on our friend Abram from Lost in Cult. Abram, thank you so much for joining the Critical Error podcast.
I'm very excited to be here. Day one supporter. I love Critical Error. Very happy to be here.
Ooh, excellent. So, Abram, I just went on a little bit of a tear there about the Nintendo community, and part of the reason why we wanted to invite you, or the Nintendo online community, let's say, and part of the reason we wanted to invite you onto the show today is because I feel like you have a finger on the pulse of what is going on in the Nintendo online space. I hope a lot of our listeners kind of like understand where it is that I am coming from. I don't think that it is a foreign concept to people that there is just this deluge of rumor, speculation. When is the next Nintendo Direct? I think this is going to be in the next Nintendo Direct, and that kind of content kind of dominating this space. Are you tired of it?
Yes, I am quite tired of it. I do want to be clear at the top.
Yeah.
If anybody's not familiar with me, you can go find plenty of shrill and embarrassing videos of me watching Nintendo Directs and getting to sort of the verge of tears for a game like Pikmin 4. So I'm not coming into this conversation pretending like I don't indulge and really love this side of the Nintendo community. But I think that there is a real need to find new ways of talking about Nintendo that engages more directly and more specifically with the games themselves. And not only the games that are out in the moment, but the games that of the recent past, in the far past. I think that Nintendo gives us so many opportunities, not only by releasing interesting games almost every month, but by bringing back old games on NSO to really connect to what we have instead of thinking about what we might get in the future. And I think that not enough people are taking advantage of that opportunity, and instead we're taking this very low-hanging fruit in the discourse. And I think it's making it harder to appreciate the games. And ultimately, that's what I advocate for the most.
I'm wondering about this lack of focus on the games, because I feel like something that we've talked about on this show before is the Nintendo paratext, how the modern Nintendo fan increasingly engages with trailers, release schedules, marketing beats, leaks, rumors, investor calls, direct presentations, more than they are interacting with the games themselves. So like the leak becomes the event that we're all talking about. Then the direct, or the anticipation of the direct, becomes the event. And then the absence of the announcement also becomes the event. And I think that's why the speculation ecosystems feel so emotionally volatile, because people are no longer reacting to the games, but instead to these anticipatory frameworks surrounding the games. So we find that these Nintendo Directs end up taking on a liturgical structure. They are a ritual point. It is Nintendo has unintentionally created a recurring ceremony. And it's like, this is why a delayed Nintendo Direct or missing an announcement produces this existential panic, because the cadence itself has become kind of the stabilizing infrastructure for the audience. Now, I guess my question for you would be, all of this content surrounding when the direct is going to be, what the leaks are, if the leaker is reputable, if we should believe the leaks, all of this conversation, have we done it? Have we done this conversation to the point of exhaustion, or is there more to unearth? Why is this so interesting to the Nintendo content listener? Why is this? Because to me, from the outside, I look at this content and I say, I understand being interested in this for about 3 months. For about 3 months.
Like,
and then
once,
I think,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If this were the first time it happened, like, oh yeah, sure. But then, sorry, don't mean to interrupt you.
No, please. I appreciate it. Because I think, Peter, you agree that, like, once you kind of run through the motions of a game getting leaked and then how people talk about it up until the reveal, you've seen it. It's over.
It's regardless of what the game actually is, it's the same thing pretty much every single time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Here's what I'll say.
Yeah.
I'm going to dumb it down a level, because I think part of what's useful about me being in this conversation is that there's not a single bone in my body that treats Nintendo with anything other than a super fan perspective, right? And while I might be more discerning than some other people that might have that title as well, I very much love Nintendo. And if I could close my eyes and have one wish and not be judged for not being about trying to better the world, that wish would be to know what Nintendo games I'm going to be playing in the middle of 2027. At any moment, I want to know everything about Nintendo, and I'm very greedy in that way. And I think that we're in this interesting moment right now where Nintendo spent a long time, about a little bit more than a decade, about a decade, training people to expect news in these directs at fairly regular intervals. They set up an expectation that has been broken with things like Nintendo Today, with things like dropping a direct 15 minutes after its announcement. And I think this has thrown the community off its axis, because now, instead of predictably expecting a direct in that first 3 months of the year, anything could happen.
Right.
And so I think that we've created this environment where these leakers are giving us something that Nintendo isn't. Now, Nintendo is still giving us plenty of news. There's maybe more Nintendo news per week than there ever has been. But it's not coming through the channels I think that people want it to come through. And so in some ways, a leaker coming out and saying this, that, and the third is releasing for the rest of 2026 on Nintendo systems, that's the Nintendo Direct for the first quarter of the year. And it's taking that place. And so it's hard to be tired of this, I think, in the community when you're longing for somebody to just lay the track in front of you.
Do you think that, so, Nintendo obviously is very interested in like continuing to sort of like have this, what you said, more like 24-hour news cycle by having Nintendo Today and having like so many avenues for getting like Nintendo news and whatever else. Do you think that is like, that the community will eventually adapt to be fine with that? Or are we just, because I think gaming culture at large is interested in these big announcements that happen where it's like boom, 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 like 8 things all at once in the style of the Nintendo Direct and whatever. Because they're not like shifting away from doing that entirely, right? They still do their Nintendo Directs and showcases and whatever. Do you think that like, is it just going to take time for people to like sort of jump on board with how they are seemingly doing that now? Or is it something that people just aren't going to be like down with, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. The Nintendo Direct became such an institution, not only in the community, but it's sort of in the way that gaming information is delivered broadly. You probably wouldn't have a mechanism like State of Play if there was not Nintendo Directs.
Certainly.
And so I think that, that was such a potent delivery device that not having that as regularly is tough for people to wrap their heads around. And I do place the blame for this in part at Nintendo's feet. I think what we need to do as a community is acknowledge that, the way Nintendo is giving us information is kind of peculiar. It's kind of peculiar to announce a Star Fox Direct 15 minutes before it airs. So what I think we have to do is insulate our discourse from Nintendo's marketing schemes.
Yeah.
If they are going to need another year or two to work out a way to train people about when you're going to get news and how, in that period of instability, instead of getting all up in arms about where the Direct is or isn't, I think we need to pursue different ways of talking about Nintendo that we control, that aren't contingent on when news is coming. Because I can spin up a billion things to talk about Nintendo, and I know that everybody else in the community can as well, but we choose not to. There's this hyperfixation that I think is actually exaggerated by the inconsistency of the schedule of Nintendo Directs and news beats as of late.
I see what you're saying, that Nintendo kind of created this beast, and that cadence of announcements created a fan that expected something, and then when you don't get what you're expecting, you're like, where is this thing? And it creates this hunger for it. I completely get that. And I do think that like Nintendo discourse just increasingly rewards proximity to information over proximity to experience. I wonder if you are able to flip that script. I wonder if that is something that is achievable, what that looks like to achieve, and whose responsibility ultimately that is to kind of say, I'm going to reject the constant once a day Nintendo rumor theory video in favor of this other kind of content. Do you put that at the feet of the content creator? Do you put that at the feet of the game's media person? Do you put that at the feet of the viewer themselves? I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Yeah, please, Peter.
I think it's interesting because I think the larger question that you're asking is like, how do we like change gaming culture, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the answer is like, how do you change it? It's like, well, you figure out whoever drives gaming culture, and the tricky thing is, it's like, well, you know, let's talk like about Nintendo culture. Well, Nintendo drives Nintendo culture, but then also you have leakers like Nate the Hate and whoever else who are driving the culture. And then you have the content creators and whatever. And so it's this sort of like cyclical thing where it's like, to the point that you're making, like, how do you even figure out where to start, you know? And I think a lot of it would have to do with hopefully like having a more curious and more maybe introspective like audience, you know, who is interested in things other than just like, well, what's the big leak? What's the today's news of it? Like, can we not look at these games and discuss them closely, as you know, we are big advocates for here. But how you get those people to want that, I don't know. I do think that like content creators and people making this sort of thing, there's a lot of it and people like, you know, lean away from doing things like just like the constant news and the constant leaks and speculation, whatever, then I think it starts to turn into a desire for other stuff. But then, you know, people are making a lot of money in doing that and stuff like that. So,
yeah, I mean, I think that to your point, Peter, there's like a real material utility in these daily news videos. And to be clear, I know, not to sound like I'm clouded up in the Nintendo world, because I'm certainly not, but I know a lot of these people. And I know that some of them don't want to be doing this. And they feel in some ways beholden to an audience that primarily cares about this.
Yeah.
So the point about needing to cultivate that curious audience is important, because I think that if the audience wasn't so hungry for this stuff, then maybe our content creators, who I would argue do a lot to drive Nintendo discourse, especially in the hardcore, would be able to push conversation in more interesting directions. Part of the argument I would make is that that's already happening and we can already do that. There's plenty of videos that people like to clown on, like it's no masterpiece retrospective about a Nintendo game 2 years later. But those videos get 3 million views, and those shape the perception of these games in the community for years to follow.
Yeah, definitely.
Majora's Mask got one of these videos famously. All the Zelda games get these re-examinations. Games like Chibi Robo and Paper Mario are only relevant to sections of the Nintendo community because of particular Nintendo YouTubers espousing the virtues of these games. And so I would argue that part of making that audience more curious is giving them more of the content that we see works. I kind of reject the idea that you have to do this sort of speculative content to catch the eye of the audience, because I think it's already happening. And I think with Star Fox, the 2026 remake that just got announced, we're actually seeing how a lot of Nintendo YouTubers guided that discourse into getting people to care about it being a retelling of the story of Star Fox.
Right.
Because most people understand Star Fox through YouTube. Those games never sold well. Those games are not being talked about from a place of firsthand experience. They're being talked about from a place of understanding them as cultural objects, as our YouTubers and content creators and writers have positioned them. So I think that there is a route forward for this better content, and I think that the audience is interested in it. But we just, I think, have to be brave enough to say, well, maybe I don't need that to make that 5th speculative video this week.
Ooh. Okay, yeah, it's a crutch and it's easy.
It's easy.
And yeah, it's easy. And I totally get that. And I think it can feel good when you do a social media post and it gets a bunch of likes or whatever. Yeah. But I really like the point that you're making just about how much motion a lot of these Nintendo YouTubers really do have in the space, because I think that you're entirely correct. And something I've talked about before on this podcast is maybe how online sentiment was able to bolster the reputation of a game like Kirby Air Ride. People can disagree with me in that all they want, doesn't matter. But I think maybe a more relevant and easy to grasp example in this particular moment might be I've been thinking a lot about the Pokemon games, particularly Pokemon Gen 1. And it's this funny thing where, like, how many people in 2026 really even played those games, Pokemon Red and Blue? And then how many people played those games before anything else? How many people played them before playing the anime? How many people played them before having all of these kinds of touch points for their understanding? And I think as time goes on, you find that that number, whatever that number is, gets smaller and smaller. So when these games come up, they are reduced to a set of kind of pre-selected talking points. And the things that come up with these games are kinds of the things that YouTubers have calcified into the conversation space. So the first thing that anybody will say when they talk about Pokemon Red and Blue is that those games are full of bugs. Whereas if you were to talk to anyone who played those games when they came out, I just really don't think that that was going to be a talking point. I really don't. And I think it wasn't until we decided, in reference to all of the other games, and when we can kind of as lore masters and super fans zoom out and see what the conversation is with these games in a way that's not tied to experience, but in a way that's tied to them as objects in a long lineage, they start to get these reputations that are not even close to experiential. Yeah, Peter.
I wonder too, like, in the same way that, like, you know, you see a picture of someone from the 80s and you're like, yep, that's 80s fashion. Like, I'm going to be curious to see, like, let's say in 30 years, what the, like, fashion, quote unquote, of, like, video game discourse and talking points are, right? Because when you say, like, oh, these games are full of bugs and whatever, I'm like, was that even something people cared about in, what, 2002, whenever those games first came out, 2004
Only
maybe?
insofar as there was Caterpie and Weedle everywhere.
Sure. Hi. Very good. Yeah, no, because it's like, I mean, hey, those games had ray trace reflections, right? When you walk by the water. Obviously, you know what I'm saying. But like, I'm curious too, this idea of, like, okay, people are driving these conversations when they do retrospectives and look backs at these sorts of games. And then when they get remade or made in different ways or whatever with this, like, Star Fox, whatever, it's like, oh, this is the discourse that we do now, but it is for Star Fox 64, essentially, right? Because it's being redone in whatever capacity that is. And when we look at the way that we're talking about it now, it's like about these specific bits of criteria that we have for games right now that get applied to all games. And in my personal opinion, I find it to be, like, kind of exhausting because it's not that interesting, because it's like once you've applied it to one game, we've had the conversation. And then very rarely are we getting anything new and substantial and interesting when we apply it to the next game and the next game and the next game.
Let me make this extremely material, I think. So, like, a game that's kind of been in the video game discourse over the past week has been this mixtape game.
Dog,
right?
fucking toxic online.
And we're not going to, and I don't think we're going to do a whole episode about mixtape.
No.
But something that I think I do want to put forth about this game is that I find that the discourse coming from people who played the game and people who have not played the game is almost indistinguishable from each other. It is extremely hard to tell, from my point of view, who has actually played the game and who is simply responding to the aesthetics that they picked up in a trailer.
Yeah.
And this is something that I see countless times when we talk about Nintendo games, right? So again, to make it material, the Star Fox Direct comes out last week, and I would say that there are two prevailing conversations. One, how do people feel about the fact that it is a remake? And two, how do people feel about the aesthetic choices made, the character designs?
Yes.
Abram, would you say that's accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually,
okay.
if I can throw in a third one
Please.
as well.
I would love one, yes.
The game as a kind of business object and brand exercise, insofar as it does or does not represent the best possible chance for Star Fox to become a mainstream property. I think that's another critical one.
Okay, all right, a lot to unpack here. I like this. Let's cut it up about Star Fox a little bit. So, I think like the first thing
I'm in hell, by the way. Go on, sorry.
Thanks, Fox. So okay, so I think like how you feel about the character designs is like a very funny point of discourse, because the conversation ends immediately. You look at a screenshot and then you look at the camera and you say, I like it or I don't like it. This form, at least from my point of view, when I see this online, this takes two separate forms. One, I don't like it because it's ugly, or two, it's ugly and I like it. That's it. And the amount of like ingenuity that people think they have when they announce this to their crowds, it's, to me, this is no different than when people were complaining about the windows in Pokemon Legends ZA. The discourse is functionally the same as whether or not you say you like the designs in Star Fox Switch 2 2026, let's say.
So what's so weird about it too, though, is like when I hear that people are talking about like, oh, the designs of the characters and whatever, for whatever reason, I'm like always like assuming like the best intention out of everyone, because I'm like, oh, we're talking about like, I wonder if there's like a nuanced discussion of character design going on, and it's not that, right? Because I think we can have those conversations about like character design is fascinating, right? And how characters are portrayed and what they look like and whatever. And there's like so many things you can actually talk about with that. But usually, you know, you're going to have to pair that with like discussion of what happens in the game and stuff like that. And it's difficult to just go
wait a
off
second.
of...
I want to highlight what you just said right there, because
Please.
What you're introducing is a more holistic analysis of the character design that doesn't start and end at whether or not you like it in a trailer and a screenshot. What you're describing is, what is the video game trying to achieve? What does this open us up to? The fact that we are pursuing this kind of character design means that we can maybe shoot for something that we did not shoot for in past Star Fox games. Abram, as a relative expert of the Star Fox franchise, would you say that something like that is maybe at play with this game?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think so. And I mean, to be clear, I think it's kind of fun seeing everybody on my feed be like, oh, I think these guys are really gross. Like, I think that's kind of neat. I think there is a less interesting version of this game where the characters are very agreeable. So I think it is just as a fun point of discussion. I think that's kind of cute. But I think that, to me, it doesn't hold the same meaning as what you guys are talking about. Because, you know, something I've been thinking a lot about is, I think that there is an argument that around the DS game, Star Fox Command, Star Fox was thought about in a particular way aesthetically, and those characters became very cute. And that continued on through Star Fox 64 3D, and to a lesser, but I think contiguous sense, the Zero as well. But this game is actually a little bit closer to like what the original Star Fox 64 was trying to look like and what Assault was trying to look like. And I think that there is something fun to wondering about what that continuity might mean, and wondering about how this series is being kind of reclaimed, and maybe who's working on this. Is this an indication that perhaps some people from Namco, who made Star Fox Assault, worked on this game? I still think that this conversation around character design and art direction is still a little bit of a dead end at this point, just insofar as we don't have the game in front of us. But I think what we can at least do is speculate about it in a more interesting way. What questions can we open up on the basis of what the characters look like, rather than just saying, oh, they're kind of yucky, and be done with it?
Even what you said right there about about Star Fox 64, like pursuing that kind of realistic look that they wanted in Star Fox 64, I found that take extremely disagreeable. You said something that I normally never experience when it's just me and Peter on the podcast, where you said something and I went, no. because what you're describing is like this, there's like one piece of art where the characters are like real.
Oh, is it where they all look like haggard and they're like their eyes are like they look like taxidermy
puppets or whatever? Yeah, no, Abram, please clarify your.
See,
Yeah, clarify.
but that's not even because this is another thing that I think is happening. Yeah. There's a lot of identification of people saying these creatures look in the ballpark of the promotional art for the SNES game where they are puppets and they are real, like really off-putting them.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about more is that I think that there's an argument that in Star Fox 64, the original, that game is not necessarily going for what Star Fox 64 3D attempted. I think that there's an argument that that game, with its realistic laser burns on the ground and these big bug-eyed characters and this more muted color palette, is striking at something closer to what 2026 is striking at. And Assault was doing that similar. Peppy hair looks real freaky in Star Fox Assault. And I think that a lot of people just haven't played that game and don't quite realize it. So what I'm talking about more is that there is a continuity in something that's more difficult to grasp, the play experience of 64 OG and Assault. And I think that there's something I'm identifying from playing those games that continues forwards to this game as well. It's less about the promotional material, which is where a lot of people are taking it, which again, to me, signals that a lot of people haven't played these games. Now, I'm not trying to make this a gatekeeping point. With a lot of this stuff, I think it goes back to Nintendo not making the sacred texts available. I think that if more people could have played Star Fox Assault by now, I really do think that the tenor of the conversation around the look of this game would be slightly different. Not entirely different, but meaningfully different. And I think that requires going back to those sacred texts and putting a little effort there to say, what have I experienced in the past, and what does that make me think about what I'm seeing in front of me? That's something I'm always trying to do with my Nintendo commentary.
Do you also think that the fact that Nintendo is like this huge multimedia sort of corporation plays a factor in this as well? Because, you know, like so many people were talking about Star Fox in the movie, right? And like, oh, he looks like this in the movie. Why does he look like this in the game? Or people like, you know, we're talking about that like little bit where it's like it cuts to being like an anime, you know what I mean? Like this like 90s like anime style. And they're like, we could have had this instead. And for me, it's the thing where I'm like, yeah, that's the movie though. And like, you know, there is in my opinion, like pretty hard line between those sorts of things. But so I guess my question is like, do you think that like the fact that Nintendo is dipping its sort of toes in all of these different like avenues is impacting the way that people are talking about the actual games?
I do, and I think that this is, again, why this conversation, I think, is still interesting to have, because it goes back to, I think, a reformulation of our relationship to Nintendo as they become this company that is interested in pursuits outside of games in a really significant way. And again, this is going to indicate the type of Nintendo fan I am, but if you really read into the ASA developer columns about these Nintendo games, you'll hear Nintendo talk very openly about how they gave that revised Donkey Kong design to Illumination for the movie because they were cooking up something new for the games. So I think that there's a lot of discussion within the hardcore communities about how are these things interrelated? And we don't yet have a very clear-cut answer. And I think because of that lack of clarity about what we should expect to travel between the two, people had this 2-month period of time, maybe it wasn't quite that long, where they were saying, we know that there's a Star Fox game coming. We know that Star Fox looks like this in the movie. A and B takes us to see the Star Fox game will look like this. And so I think that there was this expectation that we built as a community that they were going to use the movie designs. Because Miyamoto even says in that direct, hey, Star Fox is in that movie because that was a specific bit of synergistic promo between the games and the film. So there is a relationship there, but it's not yet defined what that relationship is.
You know what's so funny? Oh, sorry, no, please.
Just is there? I just get the sense, hearing you describe this, that there is such a sense of Nintendo fans being dogs chasing cars, and it is this thing where it's like, what is the relationship between Nintendo and these multimedia properties and the movies and all this other stuff? What is driving Nintendo decision making? Whatever answer we find, whatever the answer is, I could go out, have brunch with Miyamoto today. He could tell me every single secret, what went into every single decision making. I guess I just don't believe that it is that interesting, important, or even functionally stable. I think that the answer is probably a mix of things. Like what informed Donkey Kong's design in the movie is probably completely different from what informed Fox's design in the movie.
Yeah.
And I guess I just wonder, like, so like the pursuit of these questions to me feels like a trick. It feels like something made up for the sake of content.
Especially
oftentimes.
because like these sorts of companies and Nintendo specifically like contradict themselves, right? Like all the time.
Right.
So because what was it like after the Mario movie came out, there was the like news about like, oh, like we didn't even ask, like Illumination wanted to put Star Fox in here. Like we didn't care, right? Didn't they say that?
Do you believe that? Do you even believe that
no,
to begin with?
Because then
I don't believe it either.
You know,
I don't believe it either.
In the direct, you have them saying like, "Oh, we wanted this to be a synergistic thing," right? And so it's this thing where it's like we all know that anytime people are talking about like the motivations for a lot of these things, it is oftentimes just fully untrue. So then, to your point, Jake, because I'm on the same page, where I'm like, then why even chase it? Because if it doesn't matter, and if we're gonna get the wrong answer or an answer that is like specifically meant to make you think a certain thing or to keep information away from you, right? Because at that point, the Star Fox game wasn't announced when they were like, yeah, Illumination wanted to do Star Fox. We didn't want anything to do with this, right? Like it's all so fruitless. So I'm just like, why even chase it? You know?
Yeah.
I got a take about the movie, the Galaxy movie. That
Abram,
I think
lay
is
it on
useful.
us.
Lay it on us.
That was like a Nintendo Direct, basically. That's sort of my take on the movie.
Great take. That was
This
the
is
direction
good.
that everyone
Yeah,
was waiting
sure.
for. That is a great take. Oh my god.
Because did it not soft announce Star Fox? And is it not
Yeah.
probably soft announcing another Mario Maker game? Like,
That's funny.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow,
didn't even
that's
think about it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
think that there is a degree to which these conversations are trying to put together that big like pin and string map of what Nintendo might be
Ooh.
doing. I think it's all in service of answering the question again, what game am I going to be playing in 5 months?
Mm-hmm.
And so it certainly is fruitless to a degree, but I think that we got to ask ourselves, well, if it is, then why are we doing it? And I think it largely is because we want to know what Nintendo games we're playing. And then that returns me again to my conversation of, well, can't we find other things to talk about?
In the meantime, sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that hyper focus on what Nintendo game am I going to be playing has transformed into, for some people, this almost toxic relationship with leakers, where that moment through which that they learn what game they're going to be playing is so important that if somebody like a Nate the Hate were to leak that announcement in advance, something has been robbed of them. The kind of, we have given into the celebratory nature of the Nintendo Direct, and now the leaker has stolen that from us. This moment that was just as much a part of the games as playing them has now been taken, and I've seen this sentiment expressed across the internet where it's like, how dare Nate the Hate spoil me, a Nintendo fan? I can't avoid him making the headlines like this because everybody gloms onto it. We're all aware it has kind of created a cottage industry of content creation where Nate the Hate leaks something and the cavalry just shows up out of nowhere. Every single video in your YouTube recommended feed is a couple of podcasters going, what do you think of the latest Nate the Hate leaks? Well, I think they sound pretty good. Well, I don't know about that Star Fox. And then this is an unavoidable conversation. So is there, Peter, I feel like you have something to say about this. What are your feelings on this person who feels like the leaks have robbed me?
Well, this is something we've talked about before too, right? About the idea of like where priorities in gaming culture sort of land, and the excitement of watching a Nintendo Direct is a part of playing the games, right? Because it's like what we're saying, it is all of this hype like built up for these moments when we get to finally know what Nintendo's working on, what games we're going to be playing later this year or next year or whatever. And it's like, to quote unquote like rob someone of that is almost like, in the eyes of a lot of people, I think, spoiling the end of a game, because it's like just another part of what gaming culture is all about in this current era of it. And I personally find it kind of exhausting because, like, as you know, like, we all make gaming content to a certain degree, and it's like what people consider a spoiler at this point is absolutely ludicrous to me, where it's like you can't talk about the premise of a game, right, without people in the comments saying anything. So personally, I just put up spoiler warnings on pretty much anything that I'm making content about, because it's like, hey, you clicked on a video about Resident Evil, guess what, y'all, I'm talking about Resident Evil. You know, but even further than that, now it's like, okay, well, talking about the fact that some of these games even exist at all. You know, Nate the Hate says, hey, Star Fox 60, or, you know, Star Fox games coming out later this year or whatever. That's the headline. People are like, okay, yeah, great, thanks for spoiling this. It's like, okay, cool, well, what are we even supposed to do about it?
I personally agree. I have said many times that Nintendo could just email me a list of games with a little write-up about what each is and when they're coming out, and I'd be perfectly happy. To me, the Nintendo Direct is really just a vehicle to get information. And Peter, I'm very much with you. I really don't care if Nate the Hate spoils it. Back in 2023, 2024, there was this guy, Pioro, who is...
How could we all know Pioro, though, our sweet little bird?
You don't know the leaker Pioro, who is
Pioro?
based on the character from the WarioWare minigame Birds and Beans?
Birds and Beans. He has a long tongue and he grabs beans.
That's fun.
You don't.
Birds and Beans is
dude,
fun.
that's an old timer. Love Pioro. Yeah.
WarioWare.
He's like a little bird.
Pioro, of course. Pioro.
Yes, Pioro. Please, Abram, continue.
So Pioro had some kind of very intimate access to a Nintendo website or YouTube channel or eShop backend, because a couple days before a Direct, when after the Direct all these pre-order pages for Nintendo games would pop up, he was saying exactly this game, that game, and this game are going to get announced. And this caused real consternation in the Nintendo community, because it basically diffused the excitement around Directs 72 hours before that happened. And Nate the Hate now has said something similar, whereby he's not only leaked Star Fox, but because that ended up being true, now his Ocarina of Time thing is likely true. And now people feel like the whole year has been spoiled for them. Again, personally, I don't care. When Pioro tweeted out, fans of this particular MATLAB function will really want to see the next Nintendo Direct, and I went, F-Zero, I was so happy. And I was just as happy with that cryptic, bizarre post as I would have been seeing it in the Direct.
Yeah,
but I also think it's useful to approach Nintendo Directs from the perspective of what they offer the community in a positive way. We've talked a lot about what the way that I think they're deleterious and the type of conversation we have, but there's also a lot of fun rituals around them. Be it making your Nintendo Direct bingo board, be it watching it with your friends, checking out all the big fun reactions people had. I don't view those parts of the Nintendo Direct culture with that much cynicism. I think those are fun for the community. And so I understand why a lot of people say, hey, well, imagine if I didn't know that there was anything Star Fox coming and then this Direct pops up out of nowhere. Or when a Nintendo Direct in June ends on Ocarina of Time and people are like, well, imagine if I didn't know Ocarina of Time Remake was coming. My counterpoint to these people is that you're missing the point here. The point is that you're going to get to play a new Star Fox game and a remake of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
To me, that's the point. But I understand why people feel this way.
Sure, I think it's also maybe there's, I don't know, not to this might be a little too harsh of me, but I think that there's maybe just a point of maturity here, because the fact of the matter is that you telling me that a new Star Fox game is coming and then me seeing a new Star Fox game are two wildly different experiences. Like, I can't, when I hear that a new Star Fox game is coming, I have nothing else to say. I have nothing to
right.
Freaking Nate the Hate couldn't even tell us it was a goddamn remake. Like, come on, brother, get on it. So, and I guess something that I just want to make clear is that, like, it's I don't think it is robbing you of an experience as much as it is giving you a different one.
Yeah.
And I think that the experience of seeing the game is still an experience unto itself that is fun. And I agree with you, Abram. I like all of those kind of fan rituals surrounding the Nintendo Direct, and I do think that those things are fun. Even the much derided review of the presentation, which I don't particularly.
I'm not a fan of that.
I don't know. Yeah. But I guess I just want to put this out here because I think that I might be one of the few people who feels this way, or at least is brave enough to say so.
Oh my gosh.
I have no love in my heart for the content that, like, Nate the Hate produces. I find it to be largely embarrassing, to be completely honest with our audience. I think that it is the result of just like it's kind of like the natural result of clout chasing. I find that the content itself, the perspective, the creative decision making around it is not transformative or particularly interesting. I think that it is maybe a red flag for any creator who maybe the only driver of attention that you have is the abuse of professional relationships that you are allowed to uphold. I think that that is all not good, and maybe something that in my perfect world an audience would outright reject. Now, once you know, because there's a long history of kind of like leaks and sources in journalism that has a very particular purpose that is done with kind of a bent towards justice seeking.
Well, dude, no, this is the thing, right?
That
where
is,
it's like this is so like spot on, where it's like no, like these have almost become bits of marketing in themselves, right?
Yeah.
And then also, you know, Nintendo tweets again like 4:30 on a Friday afternoon, my time, saying like, "Hey, in 15 minutes, Star Fox Direct," and a lot of people are saying like, "Oh, this is directly responding to like the Nate the Hate leak, whatever." And whether that's true or not, I guess we'll never know. But at the end of the day,
who cares?
Right? But there's this part of it though too, where I'm kind of like, that is also a marketing beat. Kind of, right? And it's not, this information isn't being revealed so that it is, you know, what we've talked about in the past on this show, the real like ultimate goal of like journalism, which is like counter to corporate interests and things like that. It is a goal of almost like fandom journalism, right? Enthusiast press, as opposed to like actually wanting to dissect like what these companies are doing. Because, you know, to your point, like I'm not because he has what, a YouTube channel, Nate the Hate. I've not like watched a lot of his content because I am only really interested in it so much as being like, oh, okay, this thing is happening.
The headlines.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I just think in this world, if we accept that there is this kind of Nintendo conversation rewards proximity to information, I find that kind of like the way in which Nate the Hate's leaking surfaces for us to be functionally similar to when like a games media person hops on Blue Sky to go, I'm enjoying a really cool game right now, but I can't talk about it. Or I wonder if this game I know about is going to appear in this presentation tomorrow. To me, it's the same thing. They're chasing the exact same thing. And it is like a posture in the community. It is a stance. It is they want to be somebody. It's not about the games. It's not about the leaks.
Because it just like illustrates everyone and like, you know, poses as this way of like,
silly.
Oh, this guy's like someone we should follow because he knows stuff, or, you know,
Correct.
whatever. And it's like, whether you do or not, like, it's unimportant if all you care about is making people think that you know stuff.
Yeah.
Nate the Hate to me is kind of like a switchboard. He's like one of the people that operates the switchboard. It's like, you're gonna connect me. You're connecting me to this piece of information I want. And I gotta be honest, like, I've got no real feelings about Nate the Hate, one way or the other. But I also I'm really big into rap, and there's a lot of rappers who largely operate on the basis of mystery. Guy like Playboy Cardi, he's not saying anything. He like said Happy Mother's Day on a TikTok interview the other day. It's the first time I've heard his voice in like 3 years. And the way that information travels in circles like that is that you got these guys who are making this thing you want so bad, and they're saying nothing to you, or they're popping out at random times to give you the information. So then you become reliant on these intermediaries who are in their camp or who have access to Spotify backend, and they start giving us information. And you start to become reliant on them because you're not getting that communication you're looking for from that artist. And I think a step you got to take is you have to graduate from that and say, well, look, I'm just going to enjoy what I have. I'm going to make meaning out of what I have. And when that guy pops up with a whole album on Spotify one day and there's a big billboard in Times Square, I'm going to get hyped. And until then, I got to figure out something else to do with my time. Because
it's all in service of nothing. Like, I guess the difference for me with the Playboy Cardi comparison is that this information is not coming from Nate the Hate. Nate the Hate is not the leaker. He is not the source. He is the mouthpiece.
Yeah,
And
sure.
that's my problem, is that I think that it is somebody, whether or not they consented to it, exploiting professional relationships that could have serious ramifications for these people for the sake of upholding one's presence on social media. And I think that when your livelihood and your entire online posture is in relation to a brand that we all profess to enjoy and to love, it is really weird to me that also your online posture is intensely related to exploiting connections to that brand. I just think it's weird. I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too. I think that these relationships, especially when, not just when they come from content creators, but when they come from like media people themselves, I find to be like debaucherous and messy in a way that goes largely unexamined.
I agree, because I think that like there is the idea of like, okay, well, if you want to be an influencer or whatever, or content creator or whatever you want to call it, like the entire like crux of that is trying to gain clout, right? I understand that that's like a super like reductive way to espouse it, right? But like that is what it is, right? I mean, when I make a YouTube video, my goal is for people to watch it and it's for people to subscribe to me. That's what it is. But as soon as it comes to like, hey, I'm like a journalist, whatever, I'm just tweeting like, yeah, like really, really big thing coming in this Nintendo Direct or State of Play or whatever. It's literally just for this sort of weird perceived like posture of clout and whatever that kind of rubs me the wrong way.
I guess I just come at it from the other perspective of like, we're giving it to them. We're letting it happen.
Yeah.
And this is part of my problem. And the part of why I make the comparison to music is like, we don't have to indulge these people.
Yeah.
And I think that like when somebody posts on my Blue Sky, like, oh, you're going to want to tune into Summer Game Fest tomorrow. My thinking is like, well, I was going to anyway. And you're never even going to really tell me what you heard about. So like, I don't really care. And so when it comes to someone like Nate the Hate, I'm like, well, you have this position because as soon as you make a tweet, My Nintendo News is writing up an article about it.
Yeah.
And 3 content creators, I held up 4 fingers. Okay. 4 content creators are making videos about you. And I just think that we need to push the boat out a little further.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be out rowing in the ocean where we can't even hear Nate the Hate yelling from the shore. There's a Star Fox announcement soon. Because I just don't agree with the perspective that this is what we must concern ourselves with. I just think that we're in a period where we are suffering from success as Nintendo fans. There are so many games. There's so much to talk about.
Because it will never not be news. If he says it, we cannot cultivate an audience that is not going to make this news. Because it is news. It's huge news. My thing is this.
Yeah.
It should be news, 100%. We should also view it as extremely embarrassing. Not that, no more of this. Sure. Nate was right. Nate got him. Always trust Nate. Oh, put my faith in Nate. I don't want to see that under this. All these Nintendo's responding to Nate. We're just like throwing ourselves at this. I don't know. That's the part to me that I think is. And then another thing that's a little silly. The next time Nate the Hate leaks something, and you games media person are at a website and you go, we can corroborate what Nate the Hate is saying, jump off a bridge.
But is that not good?
I don't care. I don't care.
But is that not adding legitimacy to the reporting? Put to the side the historical history of leaks as something actually functionally meaningful and just take them as what they are right now.
I can't believe them at this point. I can't believe them.
I guess
that's my problem.
Sure,
I don't believe them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I am in the same boat too, because it's like I am just curious who is corroborating these things, right? And to what we were talking about before, like, hey, anonymous sources in journalism are important for things, but when it is like just random like early game announcements and stuff,
thank you, Peter. It is not important that we corroborate stupid, meaningless rumors like this. Listen, listen, if you decide that that's important to you and you're reporting, God bless you. But I don't know if I need corroboration for Nate the Hate's 5th hit in a row.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because it's like the corroboration of information is like, hey, there's this like big scandal going on internally in this company, and like we are trying to figure out what's going on because obviously the company's gonna be very tight-lipped. That like to me that's like important journalism stuff. But just like, hey, we can corroborate that yes, there is a remake of this game coming out. You're like,
we have an additional source on the line confirming to us that after Star Fox's appearance in the Mario Galaxy movie, he will be appearing in a video game. We have no details on that video game. Absolutely none. Funny? I'm hearing funny. Funny. run another article. That's what it feels like to me.
But
And it's breathless. It's exhausting. Yeah.
Here's the difference I would make.
Sure.
Okay.
The Nate the Hate stuff is obfuscated by the fact that this guy clearly just knows everything.
Sure.
The problem that I have is not necessarily with Nate the Hate, but it is with all of these other people out in the world in Nintendo leaking land who have hit rates of 30% or lower.
Sure.
And these people are getting news stories written about them. And I've seen, I promise you I've seen this. I'm not trying to put anyone on blast, but I've seen news stories that go, well, this person doesn't have a very great track record, but they said,
Yeah.
and
Right.
then that
I've seen this as
headline
well.
travels wicked far. So
Right.
when a place like VGC comes out and says, hey, we heard about Star Fox as well, to me, I'm like, okay, well, at least we're reporting on leaks in the framework, to your point, Jake, that this is news.
Sure.
We're not just saying, hey, this person said something and promoting their scoop with nothing behind it.
Yeah.
I take much more issue with all of these accounts that start propping up ridiculous rumors because
Right.
somebody on Family Board said something.
Mhm.
And I just think that I don't know. I just think that if we're going to participate in this leaker culture, the least we can do is try to
Have standards.
to have standards, I guess.
Yeah.
I do think that's
understand
fair
that.
because I
Yeah,
think
I think so too.
that it is important to point out the difference between someone who does have a credible history versus someone who is just saying whatever they want, because at the end of the day we can all just do that, right? It reminds me a little bit too of like anytime anyone wants to talk to me about like set photos from a movie, you know what I mean? Like I don't know if you saw like there were like set photos from the Elden Ring movie and everyone's like, wow, it's really well lit, that doesn't look like Elden Ring at all. And it's just like, yeah, because it's like an iPhone photo of like a thing that is not like it's in production, like absolutely no idea what they're gonna do with this, and it's just silly because it's like, yeah, I don't know how much is like actually behind this.
My ultimate takeaway to the community, got to be discerning. That's my takeaway. Scrutinize what you're seeing in front of you and ask, not only is this a real leak, but ask, is this the conversation that I should be engaging in right now?
Mm-hmm.
And this extends a lot further. Extends to my thoughts on a lot of gaming discourse happening as of late. But I just think that particularly in the Nintendo space, there's just so much we could be talking about. And these games hold so much perennial relevance financially and creatively. Why can't you talk about Donkey Kong Bonanza still? I know that the game came out 10 months ago. I'm still writing about Donkey Kong Bonanza.
Yeah.
Come join me. Let's talk about it.
Why can't we? Explain it to me, explain it to the listener. It's because the truth is that we don't. And you, again, as you said, you kind of know a lot of the people in this space and you kind of know how they operate, and there is this pressure to kind of keep pushing forward. And listen, I don't want this to come across as ungenerous, though I know that it is. Is it sheerly the work proposition?
I think, can I be honest? I think it is, because in my experience of like working on like videos and stuff like that, I have kind of like stopped watching YouTube videos about the stuff that I'm currently working on. And I did that initially because I was like, well, I'm trying to like come to my own conclusions and whatever else. But I realized that so much of like content creation is sort of like one person saying one thing at one point. Someone did the work. And then everyone else just restating that thing completely like as if it is true. And I'm not saying that it's not true, but I am saying that often it is like a singular interpretation of something. And to actually sit down and play a game and go like, okay, what now? I think is actually quite difficult. And I think does take a particular set of skills. And I think it is a different set of skills. I'm not saying easier, harder, or whatever, but I am saying like, if you are not someone who is like particularly strong at doing like real like analysis of a game that is in front of you, like looking at what is happening and interpreting and talking about it and dissecting and whatever, then I do think it is much, much, much simpler to sit down and say, yeah, but Nate the Hate said this thing, and I want to talk about the leak instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right about the work, and I think you're also right to that final point. I think it also speaks to the real like group think in the Nintendo community. Everybody's always got to be talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it always points people in this particular direction. But, I guess this isn't really a show for giving prescriptive advice about what people ought to be doing, but I'm the guest, so I'm going to break the rules. I think that I really like the way that a YouTuber like Arlo, who has a very big voice in the Nintendo community, will post reviews for a game a year after it came out, 2 years after it came out. Maybe it'll be an hour and a half long. And those are games that have those reviews have fundamentally changed how people have thought about a game like Paper Mario, Origami King, and things. I think that you can have, I really think you can have it both ways. If you got to make your news videos, raise the bar on what you're talking about. You don't need to talk about the bottom of the barrel leaks. Make me your daily speculation video, but ground it in your perspective, ground it in the things that you can observe and give new commentary on. Make a better version of those videos. That's fine by me. And then chip away on those big projects that steer things, because even my friends who have much smaller channels than Arlo's, they make videos that really push things forward, because the right video about a Nintendo game could be anything, will catch on. And so in the short term, speculate better. In the long term, work on the things I think have a little bit more meat on the bone. I understand you can't cut out all this stuff. I don't have this. I make books for a living. I certainly have no obligation to be timely on anything. But I just think that you can do that better, and you can make cool stuff at the same time. A lot of good Nintendo YouTubers do
that's great advice. I think a lot of what you're saying too at the heart of this is, and then Peter, I want to hear what you were going to say, but just this like, try to imagine the version of your work and your content that is not replicatable. That is not like everybody, you're saying the same thing as somebody else. What is your actual kind of like perspective on this? Because something I know a lot in kind of Nintendo spaces, and I experience this myself in my own Discord, is that I find there are these kind of like video game super fans who have calcified relationships to their entire video game history. I know which games I like. I know which games I don't like. I have an internal ranking of every single franchise in my head. And what I would say is, like, I would encourage you to revisit and say, you have changed. You are a new person. You will see things and experience things that you did not see and experience the first time. You will have a new, authentic relationship to the game if you revisit it. And I think it is incredibly important to kind of work that muscle of replaying and revisiting games and experiencing this for yourself, because you will find yourself in the middle of that ecstasy of discovery going, I thought I knew this thing. And turns out it was not what I thought. I had a genuine surprise with this thing I thought I knew. Yeah.
The last thing I'll say on that, sorry, not to cut you off, Peter, but just to dovetail on that point directly, especially Nintendo fans, Nintendo has arranged an ecosystem where this is not only possible, but it is in the zeitgeist.
Ooh, yes.
Galaxy 1 and 2 came out. I replayed Galaxy 2 and I said, this isn't hitting for me playing it after I played Bonanza and playing Odyssey. And so that prompted revelations to me about the Galaxy games, about Bonanza, and I wrote that up and I felt like I really gained something interesting. And if I were a Nintendo YouTuber, that would have been a topical video to make, because Nintendo's always re-releasing old stuff. They're always pushing out these NSO updates. They're giving you the opportunities to do what Jake is doing. I think we just need to grab them.
And I think to your point too, like the YouTube ecosystem is so built around the idea of something you talked about before, it like retrospectives, right? So like even if Galaxy is not particularly relevant, which it will be eventually, right? It is right now, but like if it wasn't currently, like it will come around, because there will be the time when people want to hear about it and want to talk about it and whatever, as if they don't already. But also something I really liked about what you said earlier too is something I kind of like believe pretty strongly, this idea that like a lot of the things that we talk about on this show are not like 100% black and white. Like it is always wrong to do this, right? There's so many things where I'm like, no, like it is not inherently wrong to cover leaks, right? Or to do the speculation and to do the industry analysis. None of that is inherently wrong. But I think that there are ways to do it that are less interesting, and there are ways to do it that are compelling and push the medium forward and add something to the space. And when we talk about stuff like this, I think what we are largely bemoaning is just this thing where it's like, yeah, but like no one is like actually wanting to do that and to want to push it forward, because at the end of the day, it's hard work to do any of it, right? And to really put the work into changing stuff. But
yeah, you got to keep your eye on the ball, and just like to anybody that's out there like discussing Nintendo stuff, just try to challenge yourself. You don't have to copy the other Nintendo YouTubers. You don't have to talk the way that they do, and you don't have to prescribe to what they tell you is important. You can kind of have your own revelation. Something that we're doing on the Discord right now is that we're playing through Pokemon Gold for the Game Boy Color, and one of my favorite things I just saw was a member of the Critical Error Nation, Andrew Bolkar, posted a review of their experience so far, and it's like hilarious to read because they're just like, this is not at all what I thought it was. What is this? And almost like revulsion, like disgust over this being the sequel to Pokemon Red and Blue. Very funny.
Jake,
yeah.
Sorry, no, please.
I actually wanted to mine Abram for one more question before we go into our ending bits here.
Do it.
And then so we've talked a little bit about Star Fox and the new Star Fox game and kind of how people have been talking about that. But I'm curious to know from you. I love Star Fox. Number one, a Star Fox Assault fan on the internet, I would say. And I know you love Star Fox.
Yeah, I do.
I believe your favorite is 64.
Yeah.
Okay. What are people missing about Star Fox 2026? What are they missing? Because that was a chunky direct about this game. This was a 15-minute ordeal in which we played a lot of music, showed a lot of levels, demonstrated an entire multiplayer mode. Of course, the VTuber function that we had to show Peter before we started recording. That I can't wait for. What are people missing about this game?
I think there's a couple things.
Yeah.
I think the first is that there's sort of this point of discussion about whether or not there is appetite for a rail shooter game. And I sort of am broadly skeptical of the idea that any genre is intrinsically not palatable anymore. But I'm going to just set that to the side. I think what's cool about a game like Star Fox 64 is that anybody could pick that up and play it. It's very understandable, and it's very cinematic. There's a lot of great spectacle to that game. And I think that when you punch it up with this sort of modern style, it's even more impressive. So I really think that a big part of this that, in my view, Nintendo is seeing that a lot of people aren't acknowledging is that I think this game is just going to do quite well in a modern environment where this is a big, pretty $50 game to play on your Switch 2. I want to put that out there firstly. But secondly, I think that this game is also looking to change our relationship to Star Fox. To me, it's happening in two key ways that I'm seeing. The first is that they're talking a lot about cutscene and they're talking a lot about story. And there's going to be a fundamentally different pace to the experience and a different relationship you have to the game when you sit down to play Star Fox, and in between every mission, you have maybe a minute, 90-second cutscene instead of a 10-second mission briefing on a text screen from General Pepper. I think that's going to make the stakes of the game feel very different. I think it's going to make the arcade framework feel different. So I'm really curious personally to examine that as someone who has played countless runs of 64. And then the other thing that is, I think, big and got subsumed by the remake conversation is the multiplayer side of things. Because I feel like there are Nintendo series, a particular one I would look to being F-Zero, that have had a piece of their appeal that had been locked away from us, unlocked by having an online dimension. I'd always loved F-Zero, played every one of them. But F-Zero 99 on Switch is my favorite by a mile because the spirit of F-Zero, its aggression, its competition, online takes it up tenfold. So what happens when you take these all-range arena-style battles that you could previously only experience locally with 3 other people? What happens when you take that and you put them in an objective-based context, you bring them online against randoms? Is that going to teach us something about Star Fox that we didn't know before? I think there's a good chance that it will.
That was very exciting. That last bit I thought was very exciting.
I agree.
Yeah, it's funny. I gotta apologize to Abram because in the Discord, you had made that point to me about the multiplayer being transformative, and I brushed it off. I went, this looks like a little silly add-on mode. I don't think that this is substantial at all. I then got back to my home where I could relax, and I rewatched the Nintendo Direct, and I queued up that multiplayer section, and I got to tell you, I think you're entirely correct. Something that did not clock for me initially is that I think that the injection of the VTuber thing that I had mentioned earlier, where you can see everybody's little faces move alongside as the characters in the game, is actually trying to deploy a cinematic quality into multiplayer where typically some of those elements collapse under what the game is. So normally, like you lose some of the characterization and some of like the stuff that is like the narrative hooks of Star Fox when you set it in a multiplayer setting and it just becomes a battle arena. I think by imposing yourself and your emotions, whenever you are saying is you don't need Peppy to scream at you, do a barrel roll, you will now have some stupid clip of your friend as Peppy saying something to you that could solidify itself in your mind in the same way that do a barrel roll did in that particular circumstance. But yeah, for anybody that maybe needs to look at it again, I recommend pulling up that Star Fox Direct and watching that multiplayer section again, because it actually was far more riveting than I think I initially gave it credit for, just to see everybody's like little names and their ships all around. They've all got their little health bars, and it's like the decision making you have to make in that moment over the objective versus taking out an opponent versus it all surfaced for me in a way that I see what you are saying. By having the multiplayer, it makes what it used to be this like foreign object, in the same way that I can't rank fighting games or sports games pre-online in the same, I can't hold them in as high regard as I can in the post-online fighting games, sports games, because I'm like, oh, this is what they are. This is what it's all about. So excited for that element of it. Yeah.
Can I say, I think it also like the like game chat, like VTuber thing, as like silly as it is, I do think it does like actually like fully recreate the vibe of like when you're a kid and you watch Star Wars: A New Hope for the first time, and everyone's like doing the trench run or whatever, and you get like it's the same sort of like shot of like everyone sort of in their cockpits. It like creates that vibe. Do you know what I mean, for you and your friends? I don't know. I think it's kind of fun.
No, and that vibe's important to these games.
Yeah.
I was just playing Star Fox 64 3D on my 3DS, and something that really like hit me playing that game was having that bottom screen be that kind of communicator with the other characters, and how they like the feeling that actually gave me of like the screen is a different size. And it's like the way it doesn't take up any of the real estate from my view of the ship and stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, this is like, it actually was hitting me in a way that I was like, it's quite good. I like that 64 3D. Abram, I think you got to play it again. I think it should go above 64 for yeah.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt and just tell you both something that I
Please.
think about and I go, love that. It's
my
the
God,
Critical
I
Error
can't wait.
Nation. It's the Critical Error Nation. If you're interested, you can access bonus episodes. We have an incredible backlog of bonus episodes on patreon.com/criticalerror. By being a $5 or up member of the nation, you get access to all of that. I personally think we've been on a heater lately. Our last bonus episode, where Jake and I both brought 30 of the best games of all time, I think was a delightful conversation. I've been having a lot of fun reading what everyone else in the nation has contributed to the list of best games ever in our Discord server. Yep.
Really fantastic bonus pod. Like, oh my God, us going through 60 games, what a delight. But I want to co-sign that. I was surprised and I was really taken aback by the discussion it inspired on our Discord, with everybody kind of getting in on this, sharing their top 30 games. Really fun to get to know people in that way. Was quite had a sense of pride over all of the. Yes.
And Jake, I will say I did clock this. You've been replaying Batman Arkham Knight, right?
Inspired by our conversation, I needed to go back.
I have been replaying Returnal because I was like, surely, like it's not Clown Town for me to have this on the list, right? And then like I've been playing it, I'm like, no, it's good. Okay,
I'm going to talk to you about that in the new bonus pod for this week.
Good.
I gotta tell you, Batman Arkham Knight is fucking me up, dude.
Returnal's like blowing my mind. Okay, cool. I'm so excited.
Okay, good.
But I would like to give a special big thank you to the members of the Jake and Peter tier of the nation. These are the people who are donating $20 a month, who we are eternally grateful for. And for the first time in a few months here, we have a new member in Joshua Day. Joshua, thank you so much. Thank you as well to Robert Quesada, Evan Snee, and Andrew Bolkar. I read from the bottom up this time. You never know what to expect. Jake, every single week you also create a sound for the members of the Critical Error royalty. What sound do you think is going to be this week?
Star Fox sound. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm excited to figure it out. I'm excited to figure out a Star Fox sound. Yes.
And
all right,
here
let's
it
hear
is.
it. All right, team. Mission support check. Time to see who's flying with Critical Error royalty today.
Looks like we've got company.
We've got Andrew Bolkar, Ansel Trait, Evan Snee, Mayra. Whoa, don't get too cocky. Robert Quesada has entered the atmosphere, and Joshua Day is here as well. Connor Truelove, cover me, please. We've got Danny Disaster on the wing, James Pierre Reed, Jacob Richter, Jared Cousineau, and Sam Woods. Please deploy the G diffuser now. Cole is here. Good luck. Mitch Dyer and Kale Chow, use your boost. You gotta catch up. Shin, Pinky Oats, Thick Dick Mystic, Alex Sims, non-existent. What do you mean non-existent? And Mergley, thank you to all of our Patreon supporters for keeping this operation airborne. Without you, we would all be drifting through space. Now let's go, Critical Error team. We're heading back to base. Let's wrap up this part. Abram, I guess you're just hanging out for this part. Sorry.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Thanks
great.
for being here, Abram. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Of course.
I've, first non-game of the year guest to the Critical Error podcast.
Yes, for the
So,
usual
congratulations.
cycle.
Very honored.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Peter, let's go ahead and wrap up this episode as we do every week with your pre-written piece. What do you have for us this week?
To peel back the curtain just a little bit.
Please.
Usually we record on Wednesdays. Today is Monday. I'm going to be out of town, and we didn't know that we were doing the main ep until like this morning. So I threw this together.
Yes.
It's a little
Yeah.
on the shorter side, which is also fine because I think our conversation went a little long. So it all
Hey, that's right,
balances
that's right.
itself out.
Yeah.
Here we go. My daughter-in-law farms bees. I have this jar of honey from some lady I know, and every morning I have a spoonful of it right when I wake up, like medicine. Well, it is medicine. Well, I mean, it's not medicine. I used to think that eating local honey acted like a daily vaccine against seasonal allergies, like everyone was wasting their money on antihistamines when all you need is a honey hookup and you're set for the year. As it turns out, this is not true. The idea that bees make honey using small doses of pollen you're allergic to and it works the same way as a vaccine sounds pretty good. It sounds like it should be true, but it has no scientific backing. I learned this like 2 years ago. Learned that the backbone of my allergy defenses since I was a kid was complete bullshit, but I still am a dutiful keeper of honey. I have it every day, and to me it helps because while medicine is powerful, yes, there is nothing more powerful to me than placebo, than believing that I will be well, so I am well. This is the same reason I believe in ghosts. I've seen the facts that people in the United States are more likely to believe in them because of our proximity to man-made electromagnetic fields, that there are easily explainable answers to paranormal sightings, but is there not any room on this earth for the things we cannot quantify? I drink decaf coffee when I need a jolt. I guess it's just fun to pretend. I'm happy to let my mind wander a little bit. I think it's healthy for me to grip tightly onto the idea of not knowing unimportant things for the sake of being happier, for believing that I am not sneezing because I got to have a spoonful of the sweetest medicine I can find, for believing that I've seen a ghost to keep the mystery of the soul alive, for blaming my insomnia on a drink that I know in my heart of hearts didn't cause it. I'm deeply invested in facts and reason, but that does not also mean that I have given up on belief. Thank you.
Woo! Thank you, Peter. Peter, I've come to after listening to you for so long, read a lot of and hearing a lot of your work. I've come to recognize the songwriter in your style because I think you can really turn a sentence. I think like sometimes it's like the most common feeling I have listening to you read is me going, oh, what a great first sentence for a chapter. What a great if you started, I open up a book. And it's like sometimes I have a decaf coffee to give myself a jolt. I'm like, congratulations, you got me. I will continue to read this book, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle with.
Jake, I'm deeply honored to hear that. Like, thank you so much. That means so much to me.
You got to be able to turn a sentence. I you know what I mean? It's like I focus so much on shape and structure because I think it's the most teachable aspect of writing, to be honest with you. But like once you get past that, it's hard to impart that quality onto somebody, to be. So it's. I think that's a great quality to have.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. That means actually so much to me.
Great, good. All right.
Well, hey,
what do we do now?
I think we do the bonus pod. We never do the bonus pod second. We always do it first. This is going to be like literally a first forever, I think.
I'm excited. Abram, thank you so much for joining us. Lending us your expertise. Is there anything that you're like, I hope I'm gonna ask Jake and Peter to put a link in the YouTube description. That's the link I want people to click and look at. Is that something that exists?
Yeah. No.
Fantastic.
No,
That's
that's
great.
okay.
That's great.
That's okay.
How incredibly uncringe of you.
Yeah.
That is how brave of you to. I hope you chart out a new path for podcast guests when I ask this question. for them to go, please no clicks.
Just anything you want to plug? No.
No clicks,
No.
please.
People can find me if they want.
Yeah.
I
you can find me if you
love
want to.
being in the no-click economy, and I know that a lot of the members of the Critical Error Nation appreciate you and the perspective that you bring in our Discord, so it was great to be able to bring you onto a main pod.
Thank you so much. We'll catch you next week. Bye.